Good morning, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Welcome to episode 123 of Silver Lining of Learning. It's October 1, 2022, with my co-host, Chris Dede from Harvard, Kurt Bonk from Indiana, Young Zhao from living in Oregon, working for University of Kansas and the University of Melbourne. Somehow he manages to balance all of those. I'm Punya Mishra, and I'm very excited about today's show, which is going to be part of a series that we are doing around India. We've had a couple of guests previously. We had Kiran and Akash Sethi, I think back in January of 2021, episode 43. We had Balaji Venkatraman and Dinada Prabhakar, I think if I'm saying that right, talking about agricultural MOOCs back in December of 2011. And we had Anushtup Nayak as one of the guests in episode 91, talking about innovations during the COVID pandemic. And so Chris and I were talking, emailing, whatever the version is that we do today, that we felt that given the scale and diversity of India, it would be good to do a series of episodes, particularly focusing on people who are working on the ground. I mean, we all know, the scale of India, but when you just start putting the numbers together, you realize just how different it is from most other parts of the world. We're talking about 1.4 billion people, 52% of which are younger than 30. 27% under 15. I mean, those are serious numbers. And then you think about it as being a multilingual, multi-ethnic, you name any religion, you name, literally hundreds of languages and dialects, and 22 officially recognized. That means you can do official work in 22 different languages. So you can imagine, like, if you have to take any curriculum that's developed in one part of this country and try to move it to another part of the country, you're looking at some significant sort of linguistic challenges, let alone anything else. So, diversity, complexity, scale, at truly like crazy levels, right? So over this episode, 123 and 129 and 130 coming up, we will be speaking to different groups and organizations working on the ground in India. So today, I'm really excited to have two nonprofit organizations and their representatives joining us today, working in rural India around teacher professional development and women's empowerment. We have Arushi Mittal representing Ashvattha Learning Communities and Surabhi Yadav representing Sajhe Sapne. I will let them introduce themselves, but I have to point to one similarity that I noted when I was reading their bios, that all three of us, and they are far younger than me, but in some weird way, all three of us have undergraduate degrees in engineering and then moved on and now are working in the space of education. So I don't know what that means. I'm sure there is some deeper meaning there or not, but I just thought that was an interesting thing to point out. With that, Chris, I will pass it on to you because you are part of sort of thinking this series through. And then I'll let you move it on to Arushi and to Surabhi.
Yeah, I don't want to take much time because we're really interested in hearing from the two of you, and I'm grateful to both of you for participating in the program. But I did want to say a little about Arushi. She was a master's student at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I got to know her. We have many young, very passionately devoted master's students to transforming education, particularly for marginalized populations. But Arushi, even in that group, stood out. And she wrote early on a blog for Silver Lining for Learning about the kinds of changes she'd like to see. She's done what we want all our graduates to do, which is to go back and make a huge difference. And so I just want to say how proud we are of her. And also to say that thank her for her help in identifying other really strong people like Surabhi that are doing good work that we need to know about. So Arushi, I'm going to toss it to you.
Well, thank you, Chris, for that heartfelt introduction. And just to sort of volley that back, I think Chris has been an instrumental part in navigating everything. And I'm very happy to be here. So as Punya has already mentioned that I do have an engineering degree. I graduated from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi back in 2010. Now it seems like a lifetime ago. But very early on, I sort of had realized that I am actually more interested in working with people and understanding the social systems around me and solving real life problems, not that engineering problems are not real life problems. I mean, that's a whole another story about how the engineering education is in India and in other parts of the world. So anyway, so I have then been working in the social change and development sector since then. Primarily, my work has been in rural development and in working on gender issues with young people before I realized that with the skills and interest and the joy of seeing people learn that I find, I decided that I wanted to switch to education, and that's how sort of how it happened. And after coming back, I now lead an organization called Ashvattha Learning Communities. So Ashwath is the Sanskrit word for a very common tree from the fig family called people. And it's omnipresent. It has extremely strong roots, and it's a very resilient tree. And that's how at Ashwath we imagine our teachers to be, that they have strong roots and then they are able to provide that shade to young learners. And in that process, we see our role as incubators and nourishers of these teachers who can sort of stand strong and resilient as the people tree. So we do that through programs for pre-service teachers here in the northwestern part of India, which is Rajasthan. And we have partnerships with teacher training institutes, with other not-for-profit organizations, and with government and affordable private schools. So I'll get into the details of the programming as and when questions come, but very curious about the conversation that we're going to have here.
Surabhi?
Yeah, well, hello everyone. My name is Surabhi Yadav. Very much from the same college as Arushi, following her footprints. She was my senior in my college, IIT Delhi. And very few seniors at that time were getting into the development sector. So have known her or have fangirled her as a college student and now as a dear friend. I am a gender and rural development practitioner. My work, I'm involved in a couple of projects, and all of the time thread is that each project is using joy of creating as a way of fighting gender inequality. The one big thing that takes all of my energy is Sajhe Sapne. It's a nonprofit that is supporting rural women launch their careers in modern day workforce. We are hoping that if Sajhe Sapne exists for enough time, we can shift the narrative from just livelihoods or income increment for rural women to actually growth pathways. The same way, actually, we talk about students at Harvard or MIT. You think about growth pathways, you just don't think just about livelihoods. We are doing that by designing one at what Punya was talking in the beginning, said the knowledge production. You don't have modern day skills or curriculum in local regional languages or in the context of rural women, right? Like if you want to talk about stakeholder management, what do you say that in Hindi, let's say, or how does it connect to an example of a rural person living in her own life, right? So we want to change all of that. We want to create an environment, an enabling environment where education after 12th standard for rural women is celebrated and is a matter of pride for people. So that's a big part of all my work. I'm also creator of a project called Women at Leisure. It's a project which is exploring time as a feminist issue, and it's a multimedia repository of photos and videos of women and girls taking out time for themselves. More recently, I also took a position of a co-lead for an initiative called Billion Readers. It's a project by IIM Ahmedabad, which is looking at reaching out to around 600 million people in India who are weak readers through same language subtitling on TV. So that's what my work is all about, and happy to engage in this conversation. We need lots more of these in education context. So I'm over to the host of the shows, Chris.
All
Punya,
right. Thanks, Surabhi.
yeah.
So the same language subtitling is such an amazing idea. I was first introduced to this by my colleague at Michigan State, Amita Chudgar, who was sort of involved in that. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but we have subtitles when you're watching TV. But if you're illiterate, actually putting subtitles in the same language, because now you're listening and you get this sort of visual feedback as well, is this amazing tool. And I was like, when I first heard about it, I said, this is such an obvious but such a great use of subtitling technology. So thank you for mentioning that. I would love to, I think, and I mentioned this in the beginning, like maybe Surabhi, start with you, and then just go back to Arushi. Give us a sense of sort of the place, the locale, the context, the sort of socioeconomic situation of the spaces that you're working in, because I think it's very hard for people who have not gone to rural parts of India to understand the situation, especially if you're looking at issues of gender. And Surabhi, where are you working in? Which part of India are you working in?
Yes, we're based in Himachal Pradesh, but our
Right.
students come from 7 different northern Indian states. Yeah,
Okay.
I can talk more about that. Yeah.
Right. And I think that, particularly in these states in northern India, the issue of women and their rights, Rajasthan, I know, there are horrific stories that emerge out of that. And so again, not to dwell on that, but to give our viewers a little bit of a sense of where this work is happening would be very helpful, I think. And then I think we can open it up for questions after that. So Surabhi, start with you, and then we'll bounce it off to Arushi.
Okay. I think let me take a minute to explain the model. So the problem is provide lack of growth opportunities after 12th standard for rural women. That's the problem. And the way we are addressing it is by designing this learning to earning model, which is a chain of community colleges. We call them Sapna centers, which essentially mean dream centers. In India, within villages, primary health centers are an integral part of villages, right? So if something is there to cater to your health, there could be something to cater to your dreams and, wanting to be to bigger or be someone, right? So within this Sapna centers are physical spaces where women can come together, learn, play, question, wonder, and eventually pick up modern day skills and actually open an earning opportunity for themselves in a modern day workforce. So we want to help women start their journey on growth pathways. And the way we define growth is that with the increase in time and effort, 5 things should increase for a person. Their salary should increase, of course. Their skills should increase. Their say should increase. Their agency should increase. Their sense of possibility should increase, and their ecosystem of support should increase. And that's the main focus. So we currently offer in our first center, which is based out of a village in Himachal. It's called Kanbadi. The village's name is Kanbadi. In that center, we had, in the first year, we're fairly young actually. In our first year, we had around 25 young women from 7 different states in India, in northern India. They came in, they did a 9-month residential course in 2 career tracks. They studied with us either project management or development management, and they studied primary math teaching. So 2 career tracks. This year we launched another career track, front-end web development. So rural women picking up coding and hopefully getting started in their career as coders. So they did this 9-month course with us. The women, all of our students, actually, most of them are first generation college goers, not just from their own families, but their entire communities. We have most of our students coming from Dalit and Bahujan communities in villages where education is not a norm, not even just for women, but also for men. Like, because education really doesn't serve a big purpose. And so they're making a very informed decision that why do you need education if it's really not doing something substantial for you? We had students from Musahar Mahadalit communities, for example, which is a community predominantly based in Bihar, where the literacy rate is less than 1%. And now these girls or these young women who graduated from our program with a job of at least 15 to 20,000 rupees, but also with the promise that they're going to keep growing in their job, they became sort of the first person to have a salary. Just the concept of salary was missing in the community. You spoke of Rajasthan, Punya. We had a student, Alicia Khan, first year, her marriage was fixed when she was 2 years old. So as a 5-year-old girl, she knew who she's destined to marry. So she joined our program as a 2-month-old newlywed person. And she was the first student in our cohort to convert her internship into a job. And then so much more follows, right? Like her ability to negotiate with her in-laws, to have her own space away from home so that she can have time and good internet to work, was sort of a bigger win for us than her just salary, right? So yeah, that's the context in which we work. I'm seeing Young has some question. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, thank you, Surabhi. I'm sorry, Pune. This is just a very, very interesting topic. You know, we've seen a lot of the rural development plans, right? You can do it by training. You can just provide money. There's also big debate. You know, if you just did this, would that improve? I'm sure you're very familiar with this. So I was wondering, among the students you had, the 25, how did they arrange? How could they leave their family? Do they have to pay? And who pays for their, you know, not only, you know, tuition, but, you know, the food, residence? Because this is a very detailed and necessary information. So thank you, Surabhi. You know, go ahead.
Yeah. So the program, the way it is designed at the moment, and because it's fairly young, probably the design changes will keep happening in next few years, is that the pay will be taken care until you get your job. And then the expectation is that because someone else took care of your education, you're going to take care of someone else's education. So the pay forward model, that each one teach one. So when they come here, the travel cost is taken care by the family, but when they come here, their rent and then stay and the education is taken care by us. And once they get a job in small installments, they can support some other students' journey. Of course, it's not a legal binding. It also comes with an understanding that they will have their own life expenses. So they decide how much do they want to pay and when. But Young, I'm going to talk about what you just mentioned, but maybe in the later half of the conversation. But you've touched on a very pertinent point, that what kind of rural development model can actually show effective results, and provided what is the definition of our success or result. But I think would be wonderful to know from Arushi about her work.
All right, Arushi, on to you.
Yeah, I was really engrossed in processing all of this information. So as I had mentioned, like in terms of the geography, we're based in the northwestern part of India, in the state of Rajasthan. And there our focus is currently on urban areas, and we are looking at 2 cities in Rajasthan, and we work with young teachers largely in the age group of 20 to 30, predominantly female population. Since we work with people who have already decided to pursue teaching as a profession, because we work with people who are either enrolled in teacher training programs, teacher education programs, or have just graduated from those. These participants do come in with a certain level of motivation and ambition. However, the gendered realities of teaching are very, very just out there. So, for example, one of the biggest challenges that we have been facing in trying to design in-depth programs to equip these teachers with 21st century skills is their time availability, because they have packed schedule in their colleges, where again, they don't have any agency to choose how they use their time. And then after the commute to the colleges, they have household responsibilities while they're a college student, after they graduate, and once they become teachers in schools. And that is something where we feel like bringing in technology really makes sense. And that ensures that even when they might be doing house chores, there are things that they could be learning, and there are things that they could be reflecting on from their classroom experiences by being a part of a digital community. Also, to give a sense of the economics at play here, we are either working with public schools where a student does not have to pay any fees, or we are working with budget private schools in India, where the fee per month would be somewhere between $10 to $20 for a primary grade student. Now, again, given the low fee structure and the unpredictability in the payments coming in from parents, most of the schools only offer somewhere around $70 to $75 per month as a salary to a primary school teacher. And again, just in terms of contextualizing it, given that more than 90% of the primary school teachers are women and are young, newly married women, their negotiating ability in the workforce and in their house is very, very limited. Yeah, looking forward to the question that Kurt has.
Well, Punya's a person who loves to play with words. He turns them one side and turns them another way around. I'm a former accountant, so I play with numbers. And I just want to read some numbers to you for a second. 1352 642 280. Anyone know what that represents? That's the population of India, 1.3 billion people. And Surabhi and Arushi, you happen to meet. The two of you, with all over 1 billion people, you know each other. That's fascinating. But Punya started to show off wondering what the significance of the fact that you are all engineers. And so I will count you. 1, 2, 3. This is show 1, 2, 3. And so that's the significance, Punya. I just throwing that out there. There's probably more word number games we could play as well here as we go. I really appreciate when you worked us through the 5 kind of components that instantiate this program, being the ecosystem and supports, the salary, the agency, the skills, and the possibilities. That was well said and well taken. I'm sure people can get a lot from this when they watch the show later on. But I'm concerned about people who will watch this show later on in 2 things. One, they might want to join up with you or write to you or contact you and enlist their services. And 2, they might want to start their own such projects. What are the first steps? So my two-part question, what are the first steps for someone who wants to replicate or do or extend what you're doing in another region of India or another part of the world? And what are the steps that one could take to contact either of you?
I mean, it seems that this is on YouTube Live. Punya is our representative right now. Anyone who wants to get in touch with us, please write on the YouTube thing. No, but I think let me talk about if someone wants to open Sapna Center or a dream center in a village, right? Because the dream is to make Sapna centers an everyday reality in a rural life in India. That's what we dream, right? At Sajhe. So there are 2 parts of replication, right? There is a philosophy part and then there is a practice part. So at the philosophy level, you have to get it right because the practice part is going to keep evolving and iterating depending on how the program is going. But the philosophy has to be solid. So the philosophy, the first and foremost is you have to have deep trust in the potential of rural women. Because part of the reason why we don't have any quality education products for rural youth, not just women, is because we don't really trust that they can do something worthwhile, right? So the best solutions that we came up, and there are waves of development that happened, right? Like there was this BPO model, the business processing outsourcing model of development, where you teach a group of people English and they are going to just become customer care service people for a lot of Western countries, corporate world, right? But it doesn't offer growth. So the person can do the BPO service for 3 years and their growth is still on the same level. And that's what we want to challenge. Then there was this, what I keep calling Silai Kadai Bunai model or beautician model, which is like tailoring beautician courses for women. So the best solution that government schemes and a lot of nonprofits came up with that just provide something that has manual labor and repetition. And that's what they're going to be good at, right? Then there was another model, which again, papad pickle model. So you bring women in villages together, make them produce their, whatever they're good at. They're already making food products. They're amazing at that. So make the small groups, let them, package it and sell it to smaller markets. I don't have issues with any of those professions, except the growth is not there. It's income increment, it's livelihood based. It's not about anything else, right? So at the philosophy level, do you deeply trust your students? Do you deeply trust that these rural youth can do amazing things provided you give them quality solutions? Because a Harvard graduate can do amazing things. Just look at the amount of infrastructure or the amount of resources that go for education of one Harvard graduate. You give me 1/10 for that one rural woman, and I think she will do much more than a lot of privileged people because of just the willingness and desire to learn. So that's the philosophy bit, right? Like the dignity of labor should be honored, her potential to learn should be honored. Then on the practice bit, so there is a series of things that need to be taken care of. One is just the knowledge production. What career tracks do you want to choose? That depends on the employment trends. Whichever is the career track, the curriculum has to be designed in a regional language. And then once the curriculum is taken care, you also have to design the learning space, the learning framework. It has to be such which is student driven. It has to be such which nurtures self-determined adults, right? And that takes a lot of creativity, a lot of research work, a lot of rootedness in the context that you're working. So once your knowledge production is taken care, your learning design is taken care, then comes the operations. You need to have community partners as your community organizations as your partners who can help you mobilize these women, right? Like these potential students, because there are many organizations in India which are working in school education, and thanks to them, in last 2-3 decades, we've seen number of students going to school has increased, right? But after 12th, we're struggling and we're grappling with innovation. So you need where these students, how are you going to connect to these students? These community organizations are going to be your allies. You'll need, of course, the training space. It could be online, it could be in a physical space, it could be in partnership with someone else. And then the connectivity with the marketplace of jobs, right? So you need employers who are looking for a diverse talent pool, who are ready to break the patterns of, or break the, or tweak their existing systems, which ask for, double degrees or 1 degree, only then you're going to get in, right? And then you definitely need this ecosystem of support, which is sort of a peer-to-peer professional support, sort of a LinkedIn for rural women professionals. That's what we call our alumni coming together and helping each other. But you need that because they need relatable role models to identify with each other's problems. So yeah, this is on the operational side, but the key part is that curriculum and that learning design that takes so much effort. It's like connecting with two different worlds. One is the rural India, the other is like all this, advancements that are happening somewhere in job market. So I'm gonna stop on that.
Fabulous answer. Thank you very much. Gave us a lot to think about, actually. Arushi?
Yes, I'm gonna take some inspiration from Surabhi and use the same framework of philosophy and operations. And I think to begin with, like philosophically, just like Surabhi said, that believing that every student has the potential, and our role is to create equitable models and equitable learning spaces. So while working with the primary grade students, as well as while working with primary grade teachers, having that empathy and putting one's learner at the center of it, and understanding what are their limitations, but most importantly also understanding their strengths and motivations, and sort of contextualizing not just the content but also the pedagogy of the programs based on their strengths, and creating learning communities. And that's why like Ashwath is called learning communities, because we believe that learning is a relational activity, and it happens when there are people who can come together and have a safe and a brave space to explore topics which are new to them. And again, when it comes to teachers, given the difficult situations that they are put into, especially in a school environment, in a traditional school environment, it can be extremely dystopian. And for young people who are going in with a lot of idealism to impact the world and to impact children as young teachers, that can come as a shock. So again, understanding the context in which they are going to operate in. In addition to that, philosophically, we believe that education is a political act. And it is important for anyone working with teachers and anyone working with students to acknowledge that. And it doesn't mean that all of us agree that what the politics of education should be, but the fact that education inherently is political, what we teach, who we teach, and how we teach determines the political consciousness that the young learners of today have in future. So I think for anyone to like work with us, that's something that we would really want to explore. And one thing which I also have really like learned to appreciate over the last 2 years of building Ashwath is learner diversity. I can be in a classroom of young students or of teachers, and there is different ways in which each of us learns. And again, creating the pedagogy around ways which are more contextual. So for example, when we create our technology products or when we create our online learning modules, we are very aware that our participants respond much better to visuals and audio. So they appreciate video content way more than text content, even if it's in their official language. Similarly, if we are creating let's say we're creating a slideshow video for them. We've done enough research to figure out that the relatability of having a human being on the other side is something that our learners need. So what we would do is we'll record a Zoom video with like the facilitator's face in a window at the top corner, so that they still know that there is somebody who believes in them and is investing this effort in them. So that's at the philosophy level, and I'm sure there can be like many more if we continue this conversation. In terms of operations, the pre-service teacher education space is extremely complex and bureaucratic. And I think the first thing that one needs to have if entering the space is a lot of patience and a lot of resilience, because there are a million stakeholders to collaborate with, and we really cannot work without those collaborations. But these are also stakeholders which are very much in the traditional education degree university ecosystem and are not connected to any forms of what you can call as progressive education or any progressive discourse on education. And so yeah, so patience and resilience. What we have realized is that pre-service teachers are really dispersed geographically, and there aren't any online mediums where they come together. So the best way to reach pre-service teachers is to partner with teacher training institutes, both government and private. That's how you can create sort of a funnel for your audience to enter your programs. And again, another thing in terms of operations would be teaching is a profession. So just like a lawyer or a doctor who first have to practice their craft and practice their profession before they're allowed to single-handedly do things. Similarly, with teachers, they should be on field in the classrooms, implementing lessons, managing classrooms, taking assessments, while they also have the opportunity to reflect on their classroom experiences, learn from each other's experiences, again, bringing in the resilience that's required to be in a classroom space, especially with primary graders, and also have mentors who can really tell them that it's okay that you're failing. It's okay that you're having an emotional meltdown in a grade 2 and you just like need to shut down your class, because all of us as teachers have been there, and learning is a discursive process. So I think in terms of operations, teacher training institutes, schools where teachers can actually practice things, and a lot of patience and resilience.
Thank you. I think Chris is going to jump in here.
So I want to build on the discussion we're having about philosophy, which I think has been really valuable. One of the things that complicates working with any marginalized population is deficit models. And I know that there are privileged students who come to Harvard and say, I really want to work to help marginalized people. They're broken, and I'm going to help fix them. And the first thing that you have to say is, no, actually, many of these people have more strengths than you do because they've had to survive it being marginalized, and you've been able to coast on being privileged. So what's broken here is the system of oppression. It's not the marginalized population. And so don't come in with models about remediation, because the fundamental issue isn't remediation, it's empowerment. That's what the fundamental issue is here. But what also complicates it is that often those models of deficit, as you know, are internalized. So if you've grown up in a situation where everyone around you says you're limited, you're weak, you have a role and don't go beyond it, you buy into that. You don't have another point of reference to do that. And so the first step, and I'm telling you this as if I knew more about it than you, the first step is to help the person themselves to realize a different vision. And then there's the challenge of, okay, now how do I negotiate with the world that marginalized me to have them see me in a different way? And to do that in a way that on the one hand is respectful, but on the other hand is very assertive and says, I have a right to be empowered. So I'm wondering, these are complicated waters. I'm wondering if you have strategies that you use both to help with the internalized feelings, but then also to help with the presentation of the new person and role to the larger context that has marginalized them.
I can take that one. Chris, that is a very astute observation. And I think that's where maybe pedagogy of the oppressed, when Ferrari wrote about it, right? And many other, within Indian context as well, many thinkers have written about that. Like what does a power dynamic or a colonized mindset does to a student? And as Arushi did mention, that education is a political act. So I'm going to take a very specific example for this in our context. So there is enough research that says that financial independence definitely doesn't always result in increase in agency, right? So just because, let's say, if we design curriculum which is all about skills that you need in job market, it's not just going to result into women becoming leaders in their household, in their societies, right? So agency, if I just take one learning outcome, agency is not a module to be taught, it's a lifestyle, right? So that's where not only intentionally bringing it in the curriculum, but also in the learning design space, it becomes so critical. Because when the students come to us, I have seen at least two kinds of things happening, and they both swing in extreme. Either I have nothing, or if I want everything. The moment you get a space where someone is listening to you, someone is supporting you, then I want everything. So in so many ways, like privilege usually is not the problem, entitlement is, right? And entitlement can seep in the moment, even among people who don't have so-called privilege. But so a lot of students come from, in Sajhe context, come from really poor backgrounds, but actually the kind of environment that they get in Sajhe, the entitlement increase happens. And I think that in some sense, that's an NGO problem in India. I think the NGO model works on charity. So the entitlement that, oh, you are supposed to support me. I have seen that happening. And I think we keep putting the buck back in the hands of the students that, no, you are an adult. We respect your freedom and we expect you to be responsible with that freedom. So that needs to happen within the learning system. So that means the power hierarchy between the facilitator and the student needs to keep breaking up. A simple way we do it is by, let's say, Glow and Grow, which is a feedback mechanism. After every session, the facilitator asked the student, what was the glow of the session of my facilitation, and what was the glow that I need for my facilitation? And students, after 1 week, they're able to very quickly say, oh, you didn't do this well today, you did this well today. So the moment they can give us feedback, that hierarchy breaks, right? Another simple tool is energizers or games before the session begins. When the facilitator is playing, like physically playing with the students, another hierarchy breaks, right? So there are many, many tools which you have to intentionally design and practice every single day with the students. Only then that shift happens, right? Only like a simple, another thing that people think that a lot of rural women should be very resilient given how much they are enduring and surviving. I've seen actually opposite. I've seen that the resilience is low because the tendency to self-doubt and giving up is very high. So it's much easier to suffer than solve. So the practice for suffering is much higher than to say, oh, I want to solve this, or believe I can solve this. So another learning tool that we use in our learning space design is every single time when a student asks us a question, oh, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do. The first question that the facilitator is supposed to ask is, okay, what can be 5 ways in which you can solve this? And after a point, it becomes like a laughing stock that, okay, now Didi is going to ask 5 things that we have to think about it. But they do know that if they have to come to me and ask me this, they'll have to have 5 answers. Sometimes they fake it just for the sake of listing something. They will just say it, but it gets into the practice. So when they come in the program in the beginning, most often they come to us because 1, going away from home is a relief for a lot of women. 2, they want to learn English. 3, they want to visualize themselves with a laptop because that's their vision of a modern woman, right? But so in the beginning, that they very straightforward tell us that, of course, we're not going to get a job. Like, that's not happening. Like, why would anyone give us a job? We don't know anything. And because of this learning experience, because of the experience of the space that is putting again and again responsibility in their court and making them practice, that they can do it. Somewhere in the middle of the year, what happens is another problem comes up. I don't want to do this internship. I want to do this one. I think I can do better than this. So now so the shift happens from nobody's going to give me a job to I want a better internship. And I think you mentioned a very nice point about how do you take care about internalization, like our own internalization. And I think that's a continuous process. Sometimes we get really surprised by the feedback that is given to us by students, and then it requires a giant step back and reflecting. But just making introspection a ritual rather than a routine or rather than a forced practice, but genuinely a ritual that, listen, how do we think about this? I'll give one last example of agency and how our internalization collides with the reality. One of our alumni, she got a very good job. She comes from a family of 5 sisters. Mother works in a tea garden. Father is an alcoholic, doesn't work. She messaged me one day saying that she's ready to leave this job. She described in great detail what all she has tried, because she knew that that's the question I'm going to ask her. What all have you tried to save this place, right? Save your position. And she said the workplace is toxic. People yell at me. People ridicule me. I'm done. I have tried talking to the manager. Nothing worked out. And she was in her heart convinced she need to leave that job. And in my heart, I'm thinking this girl doesn't have another job. She doesn't have financial stability. She's giving up on this and she's not gonna, she's gonna struggle for the next one. Only for like another 10 minutes. And my team member reminded me that she's actually exercising her agency right now. She's saying, she's choosing, she doesn't want to work in a bad work environment. So why are you worried? Like, why are you thinking that she's giving up? When instead she's actually exercising her choice. And that's when I asked her a question. Okay, so what's your plan? If you leave this, what's your plan? And she said, very like this 20-year-old woman, she said, first, I want to rest. And then with a peaceful mind, I'm going to decide which all next organizations I can apply, because right now I don't have that space of mind. So I'm just with that, I'm going to pass it on to Arushi and hear what all happens in Ashvattha for addressing these very beautiful points, actually.
I think what you said is very well put. and largely covers everything. I think I have a couple of things to add. One is just like you have this question, this joke about like asking, listing 5 points down for us for a problem. The joke around in our organization and work is the question of how are you feeling? So I think we really try to bring in emotional awareness into things, because this work is a lot of stretch for everyone involved, from our team to the teachers we are working with, and to the students for whom we are taking new pedagogies and ways of learning to the classrooms. And if we are able to create an environment where each one of us can be in touch with in what directions are we being pushed, and if we can share that with each other, we believe that then we'll find ways to move forward, both individually and collectively. So that's one. The other, again, as Subhi mentioned, like energizers, and how one of the participants has beautifully asked for rest, right? I think we also deeply believe in the power of joy, in empowering, in liberating. And so one of the values that we have as an organization is joy. And we are continually figuring out ways how to bring joy to the primary grade classrooms and to the learning experiences that teachers have. Because when they can sort of let go of their inhibitions and find themselves to be safe in a particular place, is when they will feel empowered to create the same spaces in schools. And lastly, there's this leadership framework, which I find really helpful in sort of navigating all of this, and works beautifully in terms of designing learning experiences in classrooms. So going back to my engineer roots, it's on the x-axis, we have low to high support, and on the y-axis, we have low to high challenge. And the quadrant with high support and high challenge is where liberation lies. So I think, and that's something we also, like as an organization, continually learn from Surabhi and Sajhe Sapne, that how to also like have high aspirations for our participants, because more often than not, each one of us sees ourselves for how other people around us see us. And so I think those are some points.
So I want to jump in. I know we're running out of time, because first of all, I really want to thank you, both of you, really, for doing this work and bring the insights to our show. I must tell you, it's about 60 years ago, I grew up in a village where I think Arushi and Surabhi, you might be working in. As you know, that was in China, in a remote village. I can tell you, over the past 60 years, really not much has changed. You have heard about China's lifted about poverty. They have more stable food, but I don't have any program that developed the women to become, entrepreneurs, become workers, or modern skills, or teaching. Most of the village, the schools I went to, Arushi is very much like the school you're working with. We had a teacher just pulled off the farm and taught us, So this, I really want to thank you. I think, we all need to be reminded. Actually, a lot of children today in the world are in the kind of conditions you guys are working in, not like in the US, So this is something, I wish all our children could even know that, so they don't waste their money trying to, spoil their life and the life of adults. So I want to thank you. And also, you guys have great passion for the work as well. So my question really has nothing to do with my thank you, has to do with Arushi's training of teachers. Because I think Punya may want to ask the same question. One big problem in education is that we perpetuate ourselves. So you studied Harvard, we studied American education. So when we build new education conditions, we try to build another school that we've been criticizing that's past. That's not useful. We are very critical of American schools, of British schools, Australian schools. But when you are trying to do this, you're still saying, okay, a teacher, a class. So I was wondering, are you introducing new education models, new possibilities? Because I'm always interested. If there are no school, it's great to invent something new, right? But at the same time, we have a system. You got a government system, you got the textbooks, you got all this assessment. So I was just wondering, under what conditions are you introducing something new to your teachers, rather than trying to make them the traditional teacher as they have been, given that we have technology. Surabhi has all these laptops for her students. So what do you think about that?
Wow, you've really touched upon a very tender nerve here. So how I like to think of it and how I've come to accept it is that we are in the business of bridging reality with utopia. And yes, I do hope that there is a state when schools don't exist. But the reality today is that they do exist, and they are the best bet that most of the children around me have in terms of learning basic skills, in terms of gaining social, economic and socioeconomic upward mobility. And so how we like to think of ourselves is that we are reimagining education, but we are doing that through reform. So we are entering existing systems, and we are sort of infiltrating the system with our guerrilla warrior teachers who are going to then find actually the ways in which these classrooms and schools should evolve. Because again, as somebody who is in my position and is sitting with my privilege, I do not think I have the answers for how the school should change, because I am not the person who has to wake up at 5 every morning and be at the school at 7 and work for the money and the conditions in which I am working. So our hope is that we'll be able to empower teachers and have eventually teacher communities who lead this reimagination and evolution of education system, as opposed to people who are what I like to call as like air-conditioned offices, because it's really hot in India and that really works. So yeah, I would say that that's how sort of I've made my peace with it. And in terms of technology, I think I see technology helping in existing education system in 3 large ways. One is for the teacher to continually upskill themselves, especially on content knowledge, and not be pressurized by the weight of content knowledge, and use technology as an aid there. Second is in visualization of abstract concepts. So these could be mathematics, these could be science. I think their technology can be really useful. And the third, and something which I've learned from Chris' course, is learner agency. Again, when we are talking about education as a political act, and we are talking about choice as an integral part of human condition or human liberation, then in that sense, if in a learning environment, my students and my teachers can have agency in terms of what they want to study, is something where technology can be really, really helpful. And this is also reminding me of the question that had come up earlier, that like, as engineers, like, how are we doing this? So like, I am reminded of the fact that as an engineering student, I did have some agency in terms of choosing what I wanted to learn. And there was like a diverse set to choose from. And that has been like a really empowering experience for me.
So I actually had a question. I don't know how much time we have. So very briefly, if you guys, I mean, one of the things I'm really interested in is like the leapfrog that technology has happened. Like even if I look at like when I was growing up in India, if I had to make a phone call, I'd have to there's this thing called a trunk call where you would go to the place and, you would wait there for 45 minutes and they would connect you. This is between Bits Pilani and Delhi, right? And then you have this penetration of mobile technology. And I'm wondering, there are all these other challenges that have come with that as well, with the whole WhatsApp and university and fake news and all of that. So I wonder how that is both sort of helping or not in the work that you do in sort of because there's been a huge penetration of sort of mobile technology and, internet access. So I'm just curious about how that has influenced, or positive, negative, bit of both. I don't know. I'm just curious to understand that. So Surabhi, maybe very briefly, because we are at 55, so maybe a minute each, 1.5, 2 minutes each. Yeah.
Yeah. Tech does a couple of things, right? Like either it can increase your convenience or it can increase the advanced level of knowledge that you can access or things that you can do. For us, so far, it's at the convenience level. Because there is at least one smartphone in the household or in the neighborhood, a lot of students are able to get in touch with us and give our basic assessment test, right? And it was interesting because we launched in the middle of the pandemic. And at that point, the students were recommending us, Didi, let's do a Zoom call. Because by then, Zoom had become, so and on one hand, we were figuring out, we're going to do a phone call, and on a conference call, we're going to do this. But they were the ones that, why are we doing conference call? Let's just do a Zoom call. And even today, even in Sapna centers, one of the skills that we start with is Google search. So the song that goes is Google se poocho, khud se socho, poocho sapna dal se, which is like, if you have a problem, first think for yourself, then ask Google, then ask your peers, and then come to your facilitators. And you have to be really, really, really good at Google search. So, and the reason we had to create the song is so that you don't have to poke the student every time, did you do the Google search? You just sing it. So they sing it with you, and then they have to do the Google search. So just a simple thing as Google search increases the level at which student feels that what Arushi is the term that you use, learner's agency. Oh, I can actually do this. I don't have to go to my facilitator again and again. So for us right now, tech is at the convenience level, convenience of reaching to the remotest places, convenience of our students reaching out to worldwide information. For the advancement of skills, I think we do use a bunch of softwares in our learning, portfolio. That is the extent of it, because I think the focus at the moment is really to create amazing content and learning design. And tech is supposed to aid that. Tech is not the core part of it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Arushi, 1 minute.
Yeah, I think just like Surabhi said, like it helps us access people, and because our population largely does have access to smartphones when we're talking about teachers, then we are able to create online programs that they can pursue while they're not in college as well. And I think other than that, we are also figuring out what all other ways technology can be used.
All right. Thank you. Chris or Zhao, any comments, thoughts?
Kurt, did you have something?
I have, yeah. I was curious if we could get a quick story of a success for the show. Anyone have, without maybe mentioning an exact name of someone, but do you have any success stories real quick in a minute or so? And we go to Chris for introducing the next show.
We get very emotional about our success stories. Bringing it under 1 minute is hard. I can give a bunch of them, but young woman, I would love to take her name, Indu. She comes from Musahar community. She lives in a village in Katrasin. She's a married woman, got married in the middle of the pandemic, came to us again as a newlywed person. Right now, she wants to become the chief of her village, and that's her ambition. So once she graduated, she went in an election campaign for another person who was standing up for election. And right now she's working as a research associate in a project at IIM Ahmedabad. And she's based out of her village. So she bought her own laptop by her own salary, first person in her entire village to actually have a laptop. And the funny thing is, or the beautiful thing, not funny, when she shared the image of the laptop she bought on our group, like the alumni group, the way she described it was the amount, the storage space, the processor speed, and the brand name, not how much it cost. So it was amazing for me, because what it gave me the message that she did her own Google search on what are the best laptops. So that's my success story. Whenever she takes a call, it is like a Zoom call, professor from IIM Ahmedabad, someone from MIT, and all of us join. And she, in her beautiful little hut, she sits there, shushing the kids around her, talking in English, what she has learned from her field research. So that's one of the examples.
Thank you.
I know we're really short on time, so I'm going to give like a really quick one, which has inspired me in very early stages of Ashwath. So we had this student teacher who was doing a teacher degree called Pooja Gautam, and she was very keen to learn, but she was never interested in teaching. It was something that her parents had pushed her into, and like by the end of our programs, like she's become like really interested in teaching as a profession and developing herself as a teacher, and has been associated with us since then, and is trying new things in whichever school she's going to.
Thanks for humanizing this. Chris wants to introduce the next show.
If I can just make one quick comment, just to echo what Zhao said earlier, which is just so how impressive it is that the work that you're doing, and I think it's deeply inspirational, not just for us, but everybody else who will watch the show. So just want to thank you for the work you do, and thank you for joining us today to share that. And that's all. Yeah, thanks. Chris.
I want to also thank you for sharing your insights and your passion. And we have 2 more shows on India, 129 and 130 coming up, that again will highlight and celebrate some of the wonderful things happening there. So next week at the regular time, 5:30 p.m., we're going to have a show on how micro-credentials can complement things like degrees and certifications, because degrees and certifications are both very limited in the amount of information they convey. They also are kind of all or nothing things where you're growing and learning all the time, but you have to get to a certain point in order to get anything in terms of one of these certifications. So micro-credentials are an exciting frontier. They're also a frontier with some interesting puzzles connected with it. And we'll have 3 guests to talk about that next week. Thank you again for coming, and thanks for a wonderful